Hey guys, it's John back with another anti-guru video and continuing what I promised to do, which is going through the new permitted development rights. Now, suffice it to say, these rights are more in detail and more in depth than we've ever seen from the UK government. So we're going to take these in parts rather than try and do whole documents because, let's face it, this is just mental. So, join me in a few minutes where I'll be going through the brand spanking new Class ZA, which is knockdown and rebuild for new dwellings, coming up in just a few short seconds. Okay. So the government has released the rights and we are looking through them in order, essentially. Now they are incredibly detailed, incredibly so, and much more detailed than I can ever do for one video. So I'm going to break these videos up. I'm sorry it's been so long since I last did a video. I've been on my jollies, as it were. One of our sort of 2 packets of leave. I got told off by Mrs. M. I didn't take enough leave last year, and so I'm having to make up for it. And I've been down in Cornwall, lovely County Cornwall. You guys will be hearing more about County Cornwall as the year goes on, because that's where we're looking to move our boot camp post-COVID. We're looking to move the boot camp from Goa, where COVID is a problem, to Cornwall, where COVID is less of an issue. What we're looking at is the new Class ZA. Now, Class ZA is going to fall within Part 20. That is the brand new construction of new dwelling houses part that the government introduced and comes into force on the 1st of September. Now, I'm going to tell you, do as I did before, what is allowed, what isn't allowed, and the conditions, what you have to do. Okay, and I'm reading directly from the document, so there's no interpretation here. It is literally what is said. Now, again, with the previous permitted development rights, this is one of the most locked down rights I have seen in such a long time, and you can understand why. I think this is going to be a common factor for all of these new rights, is they're going to be incredibly locked down. So let's start with what is allowed. So what is allowed is the demolition of buildings and construction of new dwellings in their place, blocks of flats. And you are allowed to demolish any building comprising a purpose-built block of flats, or any single detached building comprising premises established for office use under the 87 use classes order. That's because the use classes order is about to change as well. See my other video on that. Research and development under the 87 order, and light industrial under the 87 order. Had to exist on the 12th of March 2020, and that, together with the replacement of that building for a purpose-built block of flats or a purpose-built detached house. Now that is really quite interesting, isn't it? Because we've got either a house or flats that can be created out of the works. Excuse me, dry mouth this morning. You're also allowed to do reasonable operations. So you're allowed to do the operations necessary for demolition construction, removal of plant, disconnecting of services, removal of any means of access, removal of storage and waste from the old building. You're allowed to install plant, install services, install access, including means of fire. You're allowed to carry out the works to construct the building, of course. You're allowed to install scaffolding or temporary structures to support the building operations. So you're allowed to do quite a lot. There are a number of definitions in place here as well. So the important thing is what you're not allowed to do, because as with all things, permitted development rights are written in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. And you must read both together. Train. What you can't do, let's look at that. is you can't do this on agricultural buildings, buildings occupied as part of an agricultural tenancy, expired or otherwise, unless express consent has been granted. Article 2.3 land, which is conservation areas, national parks, the Norfolk Broads, etc. You can't do it on SSSIs, listed buildings or land within the curtilage of listed buildings, of course. Scheduled action monuments, understandably. Safety hazard areas, military explosive storage areas, or 3 kilometres of an aerodrome. So again, that zone around Gatwick, that zone around Heathrow, that zone around Manchester Airport, that's out. The building had to be in place before the 31st of December 1989. The footprint of the old building cannot exceed 1,000 square metres. The footprint is its area taken up on the land, which is quite important. The next restriction is the old building cannot be greater than 18 metres in height. So we're limited to height. The old building had to be vacant for 6 months prior to the date you make the application. Okay, so that restriction alone, I think, is going to cause problems, because you're going to see a lot of landlords, aren't you, then saying, well, fine, 6 months vacancy, no worries, I'll take the business rates relief for 6 months vacancy, and I will absolutely keep my building vacant for 6 months. Because don't forget, these are industrial buildings, B1, A, B and C. You can't allow a building to degrade. So the building has to be serviceable now, right? That's F. You, by action or inaction, can't allow the building to degrade. So you can't just say, right, sod it, I'm going to let this building die. You can't do that. There is a clause in there that prevents you doing that. You can't do a demolition of an unlisted building in a conservation area, but we know we can't do conservation areas anyway. That's Article 2.3. So the government are doubling down there. Has to be on the footprint of the old building. You can't move buildings around. Can't be nearer the highway than any part of the old building. Can't be higher than 18 metres. Sorry, I'm reading as I'm going here, because, you know, this is important. I can't be higher than 18 metres, or no higher than 7 metres above the height of the old building, whichever is the taller, right? So 18 metres is the maximum, where 7 metres if you've got a shorter building. If the new building has more than 2 stories, you're allowed to add stories to it as long as you don't breach the 18 metre threshold. 18 metres is the maximum. Now, if you do your maths, 3 metres per story, and the story height criteria are next, but 3 metres per story, 3 divided by 18, or 18 divided by 3 is 6. So no higher than 6 stories maximum. In terms of floor to ceiling heights, you've got to match floor to ceiling heights. So if you've got an old industrial building and you're matching it with the floors below, and you're matching it with the old building as well, so there's a lot of intermixing going on here. And then finally, if you haven't got plant on the building roof, you're not going to be allowed to put plant back. Very simply. Right. Conditions, what is dealt with, what is considered by the council. Now, there are a lot of conditions here, and a lot of things they consider. I mean, this is near as makes no odds a planning application. Honestly, it really is near as makes no odds a planning application, but you're just removing the council's policy, and they're just looking at the NPPF. So they're allowed to consider transport and highway safety impact, contamination risk, flooding risk, design, appearance. No idea what the difference is between design and appearance. You be the judge, you let me know. Natural light to all habitable rooms. Impact on the amenity of the new building on neighbouring premises in terms of overlooking privacy and light. So that's the standard planning consideration of light outlook and loss of privacy. Impact of noise from any commercial premises on the occupiers of the property. Again, that's to stop you doing this in an industrial estate. Impact on business and new residents from the development introduction of residential in the area. Again, that's to stop you doing this in industrial estates. Impact on heritage and archaeology if you're doing it in an area of intense heritage or archaeological activity. Method of demolition. And landscaping is in here as well. Air traffic and asset impacts if you are within the zone of influence of an air station or aerodrome or airport, and impact that the building would have on a protected vista, so views of St Paul's, etc. Wow, there's a lot in there for the council to consider. As I said, it's near as makes no odds a planning application, with the exception of the fact that these are assessed against the NPPF, not against local policy. So the council is removed from its policy and has to use the NPPF instead. You must do the works in 3 years, and you must tell the council when you are starting work and tell the council when you have finished the work. That is quite important. There we go. The final clause, the final condition, the Jim Halliburton clause, if you will, is that you have to use the building in Class C3. That is to deal with the disaggregation that we've seen in Office to Resi, etc. Well, Office to Resi doesn't have that clause in it, but they have made absolutely pointedly clear that any new dwelling class created under ZA, this class, is to remain in use as a dwelling house within the meaning of C3 and for no other purpose. So you cannot knock down and rebuild and then change use into HMO. That is removed by ZA. I think, these are my views now, I think this is going to be difficult. I don't think this is going to be easy, right? I'm aware that we're probably going to be one of the first consultancies, because one of our clients has got one, to bring forward a flats above flats that I went through in one of my previous videos, the part 20. And I'm aware that that is going to be technically challenging. The client is aware of it too. We're doing something brave and new and interesting, but it's going to be hard. I think when it comes to this, we're going to see that kind of thing again. Very difficult and very locked down. As material considerations, near as makes no odds a planning application. It's just the council is assessing against the NPPF and not against their own policies. Wow. More videos to follow. Have a great day, everyone. I've been John McDermott. I'll see you soon.